Let me start with this. Listen closely. There is a quiet H that doesn't scream. It sits in the chest at night. It whispers, no one is coming. And if you've ever been a woman with no friends, you know exactly what I mean. I want to say this out loud because silence is where shame grows best. Being without friends is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you are broken, unlovable, or too much. Yet the world treats it like a confession, like something you should hide, smile through, explain away, and that pressure, that is where the real pain begins. I've met women who are strong, capable, generous, and deeply kind, and still alone, not because they failed at friendship, but because life broke open. Divorce, illness, motherhood, migration, betrayal, outgrowing rooms that once felt safe. Sometimes friendships don't end with a fight. Sometimes they end with silence. And that kind of ending messes with your sense of worth. Here's the truth we don't say: enough loneliness is not the same as unworthiness. But when you're a woman with no friends, your brain will lie to you. It will say, if I mattered, someone would call. It will say, if I were easier, better, quieter, louder, someone would stay. I'm here to interrupt that lie. The absence of friends does not define your value. It reveals something else entirely, that you are in a season of deep transition. And transitions feel like standing in an empty room after the furniture is gone, wondering if anything beautiful will ever live there again. It will. But first, we have to tell the truth about the emptiness without shame. There is a particular kind of grief that comes with having no friends, and almost no one talks about it, because it doesn't come with casseroles or sympathy cards. It comes with questions, awkward ones. Who do you call? Who knows you? Who would sit beside you if everything fell apart? And when the answer feels like no one, the pain goes deeper than loneliness. It touches identity. We teach women that friendship is proof of likability. So when friendships disappear, the mind doesn't say, life changed. It says, something is wrong with me. That belief becomes heavy. It follows you into rooms. It makes you hesitate before reaching out. It convinces you that asking for connection is burdening others. And slowly, invisibly, you begin to shrink. But I want you to hear this clearly. Many women lose friends not because they are difficult, but because they became honest. They stopped over giving. They stopped performing. They stopped absorbing disrespect in the name of peace. And when you stop betraying yourself, some people cannot stay. There is courage in that kind of loss, even if it doesn't feel brave while you're living it. Being friendless often means you are between identities. The old version of you no longer fits. The new version hasn't found her people yet. And that in-between space, it is lonely, it is awkward, it is painfully quiet, but it is also sacred, because in that silence, something important happens. You start hearing your own voice again. Not the voice shaped by the group, not the voice that keeps the harmony. Your voice, clear, honest, unaided. And that voice might be saying, I deserve relationships that don't require me to disappear. That realization hurts. But it also sets the stage for something braver than belonging at any cost, belonging without abandoning yourself. Here's the part we rarely admit. Being a woman with no friends can make you question your own humanity, because we are wired for connection. Our nervous systems are built to co-regulate, to laugh together, to be witnessed. So when that disappears, the body doesn't just feel sad, it feels unsafe. You may find yourself replaying old conversations at night, wondering what you missed, what you said wrong, what version of yourself might have kept them. That mental spiral isn't weakness. It's your brain searching for certainty in a loss that had no clear ending. But listen, closure is not always something another person gives you. Sometimes closure is choosing to stop interrogating yourself for someone else's comfort. There is a myth that strong women don't need friends. That independence is the same as isolation. It's not. Strength doesn't mean you stop needing people. It means you stop accepting connections that cost you your dignity. Many women with no friends are carrying an invisible history. They were the listener, the rescuer, the reliable one. They held space for everyone else's pain until there was no one left to hold space for theirs, And when they finally asked for reciprocity, the room emptied. That kind of loneliness cuts deep because it feels unfair, and it is. But here's the reframe that changes everything. Your loneliness is not proof that you are unlovable. It's evidence that you are no longer willing to settle for one-sided love. And that boundary, it will feel like abandonment at first. The quiet after choosing yourself can feel terrifying. Your phone stays silent. Weekends stretch long. And the world seems to move on without noticing your absence. But something essential is happening underneath that stillness. You are learning how to be with yourself without performing, without explaining, without earning your place. And that skill, being present with your own pain instead of numbing it, is the foundation of every deep, healthy relationship you will ever have. This season isn't empty. It's preparing you. Let's talk about the shame, because it's always there, lurking quietly behind the loneliness. The shame of thinking everyone else has a circle. What's wrong with me? The shame of avoiding social questions. The shame of pretending you're busy when you're actually just alone. Shame thrives on comparison. And for women, comparison is relentless. Social media makes friendship look effortless. Group photos, inside jokes, brunch tables full of laughter. What you don't see are the compromises behind those smiles, the swallowed truths, the self-betrayals traded for belonging. And when you're a woman with no friends, shame will tell you that you failed some invisible test of womanhood, that you didn't nurture enough, didn't adapt enough, didn't stay agreeable enough. But here's what shame never tells the truth about: sometimes friendships end because you stopped carrying what was never meant to be yours. There is a difference between being alone and being abandoned by yourself. Many women lose friends at the exact moment they begin to honor their own limits. They stop saying yes when they mean no. They stop laughing at jokes that hurt. They stop shrinking to keep others comfortable. That change can feel like social death, but it is actually emotional birth. Being without friends forces a confrontation most people avoid their entire lives. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I without roles, without approval, without a witness? And that question is terrifying. But it is also where authenticity is born. When you sit with that discomfort, when you resist the urge to run back to familiar but unsafe connections, you begin to build self-trust. And self-trust is louder than loneliness. It becomes the quiet voice inside you that says, I can survive this. I don't have to abandon myself to belong. That voice will guide you forward. Even when the path feels empty right now, there is a moment in this journey that almost no one prepares you for, the moment when you realize the loneliness isn't leaving quickly, when weeks turn into months, when the silence stops feeling temporary and starts feeling structural. That's when panic can set in. Your mind will rush to fix it, to settle, to reconnect with people who already showed you who they were, to accept crumbs just to feel chosen again. And that urge makes sense. The human nervous system would rather tolerate familiar pain than face uncertain emptiness. But this is the moment where courage is required, not the loud, heroic kind, but the quiet kind that looks like staying put. Because sitting in this loneliness without self-betrayal is one of the bravest things a woman can do. This is where you learn the difference between connection and attachment. Attachment says, I need someone to validate my existence. Connection says, I want to be seen, but not at the cost of my truth. When you've lived your life being the emotional glue, letting go of attachment feels like withdrawal. Your body aches for contact. Your heart aches for familiarity. And yet, this pause is not punishment. It is recalibration. You are learning how to soothe yourself without numbing, how to comfort yourself without minimizing your pain, how to sit with longing without turning it into desperation. These skills are rarely taught, but they are essential. Many women with no friends think this season means they are falling behind in life. In reality, they are building emotional muscle most people never develop because they are always surrounded by noise. You are not being left behind. You are being strengthened from the inside out, and one day when new people enter your life, you will notice something different. You won't cling. You won't over-explain. You won't audition for acceptance. You will show up grounded because you learned how to stand alone without collapsing. That is not emptiness. That is preparation. There's another layer to this experience that deserves honesty. The anger. Not the loud kind, but the quiet resentment that creeps in when you realize how much you gave, how available you were, how often you showed up while slowly disappearing from your own life. Anger gets a bad reputation, especially for women. We're taught to soften it, spiritualize it, explain it away. But anger is often just grief that finally found its voice. You might feel angry at past friends for leaving, angry at yourself for staying too long, angry at a culture that tells women to be endlessly nurturing, but offers very little nurturing in return. That anger doesn't make you bitter, it makes you awake, because when you're a woman with no friends, you begin to see patterns clearly. You see how often closeness was built on your emotional labor, how often you were valued for what you provided, not for who you were. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. This is the stage where boundaries stop being theoretical. They become non-negotiable. You stop romanticizing potential. You stop excusing inconsistency. You stop convincing yourself that love is supposed to hurt this much. And yes, this clarity can feel isolating. It narrows the field. Fewer people qualify for access to you now. But that is not loss. That is discernment. What's happening here is a shift from external validation to internal authority. You're no longer asking, do they like me? You're asking, do I feel safe, respected? And seeing that question changes everything. Loneliness with self-respect is painful, but loneliness without self-respect is devastating. You have already survived the second. Now you're learning the first. And here's the quiet truth. This phase doesn't last forever. But the wisdom it builds, that stays. It becomes the filter through which every future connection passes. You are no longer desperate for belonging. You are becoming deliberate about it. At some point, something unexpected happens. You stop panicking about the silence, not because it doesn't hurt, but because it no longer defines you. The loneliness becomes a feeling, not an identity. And that shift is subtle, but profound. You begin to notice how much of your past social life was built on distraction, noise, constant contact that kept you from hearing your own needs. And now, in the quiet, you start asking different questions. What do I actually enjoy? What do I believe when no one is influencing me? Who am I becoming? This is where self-connection deepens, not in an inspirational quote kind of way, but in a grounded, embodied way. You learn your rhythms, your limits, your values. You learn what drains you and what restores you. And that knowledge becomes power. Being a woman with no friends often means you develop a deep relationship with yourself before anyone else enters the picture. You learn how to sit with discomfort without outsourcing it, how to celebrate small joys alone, how to grieve without an audience. And here's the paradox. The more anchored you become in yourself, the less lonely you actually feel, because loneliness is not just the absence of people. It's the absence of authenticity. And authenticity begins within. This is also where your standards quietly rise. You are no longer impressed by proximity or familiarity. You're drawn to presence, to emotional availability, to people who can meet you where you are instead of asking you to be smaller. This phase can feel invisible from the outside. No dramatic announcements, no public milestones, but internally it's seismic. You are becoming someone who knows herself, and that changes the way you relate to everyone. You're not closed off, you're calibrated. And when connection comes again, it won't be rushed or forced. It will be chosen from a place of wholeness, not hunger. Now let's talk about hope, but not the shiny, motivational kind. The quiet, grounded hope that grows after you've been disappointed enough times to stop fantasizing and start trusting yourself. Hope at this stage doesn't sound like everything will work out. It sounds like no matter what happens, I will be okay. And that difference matters. When you've been a woman with no friends for long enough, you stop chasing connection and start recognizing it. You can feel the difference between curiosity and desperation, between mutual interest and emotional hunger. Your body knows now, and you listen to it. This is also when you begin to re-enter the world, not loudly, not performing, but honestly, maybe through a shared interest, a conversation that lingers, a moment of unexpected resonance. And you don't rush to label it or secure it, you let it unfold. Because you've learned something essential. Forcing closeness is a form of self-abandonment. Real connection cannot be rushed, it has to be grown. There is a tenderness that emerges here. You become gentler with yourself and with others. You understand that everyone is carrying something, that many people are lonely too, even if their calendars look full. This awareness doesn't make you not ava, it makes you compassionate without over-giving. And here's the beautiful truth. Friendships formed after this kind of season are different. They are slower, deeper, less dramatic. They are built on shared values instead of shared wounds. You're no longer trying to be chosen. You're allowing yourself to choose. Hope in this form is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It simply shows up as a quiet readiness, a sense that when connection arrives, you'll be able to meet it without losing yourself. That's not loneliness anymore. That's resilience. There comes a moment when you realize you're no longer waiting. Not waiting for texts, not waiting for invitations, not waiting for someone to finally see you. And that realization can feel both empowering and heartbreaking at the same time, because waiting once meant hope. It meant belief. It meant you trusted that if you were patient, connection would return the way it used to. But what you learn in this season is that growth often requires release. And release is rarely gentle. When you're a woman with no friends, the world can feel like it's moving on without you. Birthdays pass quietly. Milestones go unwitnessed. And there's a grief in that, not because you need applause, but because being seen matters. Being remembered matters. So you learn how to witness yourself. You learn to mark your own milestones, to honor your own survival, to validate your own emotions without an external mirror. And that changes the architecture of your self-worth. It becomes internal steady, less reactive. This is where loneliness transforms into solitude. Solitude isn't empty. It's spacious. It gives you room to breathe, to reflect, to imagine a life that isn't built around proving your worth to others. You start designing your life based on alignment, not approval. And something remarkable happens here. Your energy shifts. You become less urgent, less apologetic, more present. People can feel that. Healthy connection is drawn to grounded energy, not chasing, not performing, just being. This is not the end of your story. It's the end of a chapter where your value depended on being included. You are no longer asking for permission to exist in your fullness. You are standing in your life, awake, self-aware. Let me leave you with this, because this is the truth that ties it all together. A woman with no friends is not a woman without worth. She is often a woman who has outgrown who she had to be to belong. She is a woman who chose integrity over illusion, depth over performance, truth over comfort. This season did not come to punish you. It came to refine you. You were stripped of noise so you could hear yourself. You were stripped of approval so you could build self-trust. You were stripped of familiar connection so you could learn the difference between being wanted and being valued. And yes, it hurt deeply, quietly, in ways that don't photograph well or explain easily. But look at what emerged: discernment, emotional strength, the ability to sit with yourself without collapsing, the courage to say, I will not abandon myself just to avoid being alone. That is not loneliness, that is leadership in your own life. Friendship will come again, not rushed, not forced, not rooted in who you pretend to be. It will come because you now know how to show up as yourself and how to walk away when something costs you your soul. And until then, remember this: you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not invisible. You are becoming. And becoming often looks like standing alone for a while, steady, honest, and unafraid to build a life that is real. That is the bravest ending of all.